Today we're going to start Psalm 2. And we don't know who the author of this psalm is. Well, let me back up. We do know who the author is, but we can't tell it from reading the psalm because there's no preface, there's no title or subtitle attributing the authorship. But the reason we know who wrote it is that in Acts 4, this quote, "Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing?" is expressly attributed to David. And so we can know that David wrote this psalm. Let's read the whole psalm together. It's short. It's 12 verses. It's about Jesus. It's primarily God talking to the nations. And this is a beautiful gospel presentation to the whole world. And it's thousands of years old. And it's God sharing the gospel with the leaders of the world. So if I were preaching to kings or presidents or rulers, this is probably the psalm I'd preach the gospel from. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. That's a reference to Messiah, Jesus, saying, "Let us break their bands asunder, cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion." New paragraph. "I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel." New paragraph. "Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him." 12 verses. Boy, there's a lot here. There is a lot here. I don't know if it blessed you just reading through it like it blessed me. But the first 6 verses of the first paragraph, let's see how far we can get in the next few minutes. So the question, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The idea of raging against God or imagining ideas against the plans of God. That's the sense of it, is that the heathen, the sense of it is that the world in general and governments in general, national entities in general, are raging against God, bent against God, and imagining vain plans to escape God's control, God's authority, accountability to God. Verse 2 continues and develops the thought. The kings of the earth, the rulers of the earth, set themselves. They try to establish themselves. They try to set their own plans. They, contrary to God's decrees, to God's providence and sovereignty, they try to set up themselves in their own power, their own authority. And the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. So, my friend, we should not be surprised that for thousands of years, up to today, the general state of the world is that nation to nation, government to government, and party to party, there's a general pervasive godlessness. Now, you might say, well, my party includes God and the other party doesn't include God. But can I just throw out there that in America, neither of our parties are all that godly, okay? Yeah. There's one platform that is more welcoming of the ideas and the principles that God has set forth, and one that is clearly more defiant. But to me, it's degrees of godlessness, okay? There is not a national entity in America that is wholly surrendered and committed to the ideals of God. I wish there were, okay? It's varying degrees of godlessness. And there's a whole lot of godlessness that is pervasive in America and in our national governance scene, okay? But that's really the case with the whole world, is that governments and rulers and kings raise up themselves, take counsel that goes against the Lord and against the teachings, the identity, and the office, I could say, of Jesus, the rulership of Jesus, against his anointed. That's a reference to Messiah. What do they say? Verse 3, let us break their bands asunder. So the nations, the rulers, the kings, they view God and Jesus as binding them. You see, they've turned God into the opposition, and they want to break free from the binding of God and his authority and his rulership. That in and of itself we could spend a lot of time on, because so often in our lives, let's just make it personal for a minute. Do you view God's will as binding to you? Then you don't understand it. Do you view God's plans as disruptive to you? Then you don't understand them. Do you view God as in any way intrusive into your life? Then you don't understand him, okay? God's will, God's ways, God's presence are the best blessings that have ever come in or been made available to you. And to view them as something that binds or that bands you together and to try to escape it is to really, in the truest sense, it's really to work against yourself, because God is for you. And so if you're working against God, then you're working against yourself. So they're working against themselves. Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Let's escape God. Let's escape his rulership and his governance in our lives and in our nation. But look at verse 4. It's futile. It's silly that they would do this. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. God finds our efforts nationally, globally, to rule as laughable. To escape his sovereignty and providence and rulership, he views that as laughable. He sits in the heavens and he laughs. And the Lord will have them in derision. That word derision is, he will mock their plans. He will scoff at their plans. He will ridicule their plans. When God laughs when someone turns him into the opposition with an effort, the imagination that they're going to win. They can escape accountability to him. They can escape his ultimate rule, ultimate authority. Verse 5, first he'll laugh, mock their plans. Then, verse 5, he shall speak unto them, but he won't speak in grace. He won't speak in long-suffering and patience. He will speak in his wrath. And he will vex them. He will confuse them. He will bring them to alarm and dismay. He will bewilder them. He will terrify them. So he will speak unto them in his wrath and vex them in his sore displeasure. So for a short time, he's going to humor them and let them think that they're winning, let them think they're getting their way. But then he's going to speak. And he's going to speak in wrath. He will confuse them. He will terrify. They will know it's him. It will be too late. Time will come for God to act. He will vex them in his sore displeasure. Verse 6 kind of wraps this paragraph up, and we'll stop here for today. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill. This is God speaking. And he's saying, in spite of all of your plans, in spite of all of your globalism, in spite of all of your ideas, before time began, I have anointed, I have set. The idea is the anointing of a king. I have set my king upon my holy hill, Zion. This is the highest hill in Jerusalem. It's the place of God's holiness. And God has said this is where Jesus will reign forever and ever. And so this has been decreed. God's saying, you can make your plans. I laugh at your plans. I have already determined the end of this journey. Jesus, my King, will reign in Jerusalem. Nothing and no one will stop it. I laugh at anybody who thinks they can stop it. And when it comes time to deal with this global conglomeration of nations, I will speak in wrath. I will deal with them in displeasure. and Jesus will reign. So we'll pick up here tomorrow, and we'll see who Jesus is. We'll talk about who is this anointed, this Messiah, this King. Verse 7 calls him the Son. Verse 12 says, kiss the Son. And so we'll see the rest of the gospel going through this psalm tomorrow.